What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it feels good to be back just in time because things went off the rails seemingly at CES around a lot of those Switch 2 concepts that were being shown off to the point now where Nintendo has actually issued a statement around it, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft now really going all in on the multi-platform support, but they're also bringing another company with them to release some stuff on the Xbox. And then we also have a brand new system that's now been announced. This one, though, is actually for the original PlayStation. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps it a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with an anniversary that actually happened over the weekend. That's for that original Nintendo Switch presentation that Nintendo had. That was all the way back in 2017, on January 12th. That happened actually over the weekend. And it's funny to look back on that now being 8 years old. 8 years. I mean, really think about that. It's been 8 years since we've technically seen Nintendo announce a new console generation, a new system at all. Because before, yes, we'd have a console, we'd also have a handheld. So you could kind of go back and forth every 3, maybe 4 years at most between these announcements. It's been quite a while, but also think back on that presentation and some of the incredible games that were shown there. I mean, just there alone, Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, and others, like that was a stacked presentation, which is one of the reasons clearly people are very excited about this inevitable presentation for the Switch 2. There's belief that there would be a trailer that would play similar to the Switch, where they just kind of introduce it for a few minutes, and then have the full blowout that would probably be like, what, an hour or so long, showing a bunch of games, setting up the generation, hitting us with the release date, and of course the price point. But yes, it's been 8 years since you originally saw that big Switch presentation with Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild to close it out. Also, next handheld was added again as they shared this image over on their Twitter X account. They say, imagine an NS2 or Nintendo Switch 2 dock stuck in the snow with a frosted logo, add 2 polar bears playing in the background to make it look more... Okay, so obviously they're playing into the idea of AI being used in these different images that they are posting online, which people did catch on to that immediately when they had first released that image of the Switch 2 seemingly sideways, and even the back of the dock that was shown, the background just didn't look quite right. And here they're just making it incredibly obvious. Now, the dock itself, we've seen pretty much extensively, it feels like. We've seen the front of it here, we've seen the back of it, even some zoomed in shots of, for example, the voltage and amperage. Here, though, I guess you can kind of zoom in and see it's obscured by kind of just like a white patch almost here. It's very strange that it's sitting like that. I don't think it illuminates or anything. I think that was done maybe on purpose somewhat. Or they had a light shining directly on it. It was reflecting off of even just like the matte black plastic. But there you go. It seems like we've, at least at this point, seen all aspects just about of the dock outside of maybe some of the ports, but those are apparently still the same. So unfortunately, not a lot to take away from this image, other than maybe that Switch 2 logo that's been going around is actually pretty close to the real thing. Oh, and big news for people who are trying to avoid spoilers for the big release from Nintendo this week for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. So you can see images that were shared. This is by Nintendo. Yeah, it looks like it's gotten out there, and we know what happens when these Switch games get out there early. It's pretty easy to dump them and then upload them online, pass them around. Obviously, the thing here, though, is that the game is well known. Came out on the Wii forever ago, it feels like, and it's an HD release that costs more than that one, so it's not exactly a game I see a lot of excitement around right now online. One, it's a Wii game that's being brought up and questionable at times with some of the images and video they're showing when it comes to the quality of it. But also, it's coming out right when everyone is asking Nintendo to show off the Switch 2. So anytime they try to promote this game, underneath of it, it's like, Switch 2, where's Switch 2? When are you showing off the next system? So there you go. DK will come out this week. I'm not expecting a big rush for it, though, necessarily to the store. But hey, if you're trying to avoid spoilers because you've never played it, just know it probably is going to be popping up at some point this week online. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with all the craziness that was happening at CES, specifically with Genki, who was showing up there with a mock-up or a model of the Switch 2 system that there was a lot of information flying around, some of it kind of sketchy. There's a Switch 2 on the black market right now being passed around, and people can get dimensions and measurements of it. Some saying that no, that just the measurements kind of got out there. Maybe Nintendo shared them with some third parties and that leaked from there. And Genki was they weren't exactly clear about how they got the information to make the mock-up. Still though, they were more than happy to put it out there and let people know they can come by the booth and check out the 3D print basically that they had of this system. And many of the outlets did go there, take pictures, wrote articles. So I will say this, at least from the side of promotion on Genki's part, they did pretty good. I mean, that's the idea. Get their name out there in some way. Get into different articles, get into people's feeds, and their name was all over the place. It was one of the most, at least I could see, talked about thing in terms of video games at CES, and it wasn't even a real system. It was a dummy system. Still though, Genki did seem to backtrack on some stuff. For example, we can see this posted up. This is in an interview with GameSpark. Genki said, according to the person in charge, this cover was planned and produced based on leaked information from the industry, and the official product size has not yet been decided. He also commented that he has not seen the actual product yet. So essentially, while that black market Switch 2 stuff was being thrown around, I kind of wrote it off a little bit as could it just be like chatter back and forth at a convention, just throwing stuff around, having fun, joking and stuff. Potentially. All right. Well, it goes a bit further. As we can see, this is posted. This right here is from French journalist Julien Tellic, who attended CES, revealed the story in a YouTube short saying, quote, I spoke with the guy from Genki just behind me. He told me that Nintendo had already sent lawyers their way, but Genki has nothing to worry about because they've never signed any papers with Nintendo. No confidentiality agreement, no NDA, so the Japanese brand is in the clear. Now, this seemed to morph into a story of Nintendo lawyers rolling up on Genki at CES, but I've looked everywhere I could, even like this translation multiple times over through different machine learning, all that stuff, right? Just to see if maybe there was something that was maybe lost in that translation. And it doesn't seem to be the case. This is the only source I've been able to find around the story, and it wasn't anything about them actually showing up at CES. So on one side, I think that might just be maybe some embellishment of what happened here. If I had to take a guess, Genki probably received an email from Nintendo looking into the thing, because once you start hearing about black market Switch 2s, oh, they're creating these mock-ups of the system, how do they get the measurements? Yes, if you're Nintendo and you're about to release a system, and we'll start launching a system here, we assume soon, that is going to sell, we figure, tens, hundreds some odd million systems, you want to make sure you have everything on lock when it comes to your security, especially out of the factory. So I think there was a bit of a embellishment here. At least I haven't seen anything that says that Nintendo showed up and tried to shut them down or anything like that. So I think it was pretty straightforward of an email maybe went out, or a letter even, to Genki. But we did have one other thing here, as we do have an official statement now from Nintendo as they have responded to this situation. This we can see is posted up by CNET Japan. They say, when asked for comment, Nintendo distanced itself from Genki's actions, saying the gaming hardware that Genki is claiming to be Nintendo hardware at CES is unofficial and was not provided to the company by Nintendo. So again, pretty straightforward. Manufacturers for these accessories, third-party accessories, sure, like let's say when the Switch came out, some just bought it, measured it themselves, and released their own accessories. They don't necessarily need Nintendo to be like, oh yeah, you can release accessories to the system. No, but if they want to partner with them first party wise, like you see those partnerships occasionally where it's like Nintendo certified or they're like Nintendo partner. And you see that with like Powerade, for example, I think is one. But when you see those third party controllers come out with Nintendo's like branding on it, that means they are partnered. In this case, doesn't have to be. So that's kind of where we are. It's still hard to say how exactly these dimensions and measurements got out there. If I had to take a guess, it probably is Nintendo provided to some, and then the information got out there from there and it just kind of leaked and circulated at that point. But hey, if we hear about there being a Switch 2 on the black market and that story continues to unfold, I'll keep you guys up to date. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft reportedly going all in on this multi-platform strategy, which I feel like at this point isn't surprising to hear that more first-party Microsoft and Xbox games will be making the jump to not only the PlayStation 5, but also the Switch 2. I think it makes a lot of sense for Microsoft to explore the Switch 2 audience and library and stuff now more than ever, especially when it's about to come out, and they've already seen what the Switch was able to accomplish, and the Switch 2, well, that's going to be much more capable, we assume, than the current Switch. So it's maybe not too surprising there, and now we've seen, of course, the PS5 already receive a bunch of previously Xbox only games. Well, in a recent podcast from Nate the Hate, he did go over a bunch of games that are going to be seemingly making the jump to Nintendo and PlayStation. And then we also had a report from Windows Central naming a few more. So let's actually start here from the top. We'll go over a couple of these games, and I'll throw some of the trailers here for them for you. Let's start with we have Flight Simulator that's going to PS5 and Switch 2, according to Nate. Halo the Master Chief Collection. This is a big one for a lot of people because it's Master Chief, who has been Xbox's big mascot, big brand there for Team Green, seemingly going to be showing up, I guess, on the PlayStation 5 and the Switch 2 this year, actually. And that would be a big one, I think, for the Switch 2, especially to get in its first year. But I think Halo in general and just like the PlayStation 5 will be very popular. Could be a pretty big resurgence for that franchise. I did an entire video this weekend going over how big of a shift that would be for gaming, so check that one out if you want to learn a bit more there. We also hear that porting and patching current Switch lineup for Switch 2 with Microsoft that introduces things like 4K support, for example, might see ray tracing thrown in there as well. So apparently any games that Microsoft already has on the Switch should be seeing at least some improvements there for the Switch 2. Now, on the other side of things, it also appears that Square Enix is going to be doing what they said they'd be doing, but involving remake and rebirth for Final Fantasy VII, and that's moving it to other platforms outside of PlayStation and technically PC. These games, according to Nate, would be making the move to Switch 2 and Xbox. We would be seeing remake come out this year on other platforms, and then rebirth would follow up next year in 2026. And along with that, Final Fantasy XVI would be moving to Xbox, and in fact, this could be that mystery game maybe for the Xbox Direct next week, and in fact, might actually shadow drop there and be available right away. Now, as I mentioned, Windows Central followed up here, corroborated basically everything that I could see that Nate mentioned in his podcast, and they threw a few other titles into the mix. So Hellblade 2, that would be going to the PS5, Age of Mythology on the PS5, and then Gears of War 1 Ultimate Edition as well to the PlayStation 5. Now, they're not really sure if these would also be moving to Switch 2, but based on the fact that Microsoft seems to be all in across the board, and I'm sure there's plenty of money for them to make on Nintendo's next system, I think if it can run there, they'll make it happen. And maybe Hellblade 2 would be the one I'm like, okay, we'll see there. But Gears of War 1 Ultimate, sure. Age of Mythology, I mean, we already talked about like the mouse, potentially that mouse setup for the Switch 2 seems perfect for any kind of RTS style games. Maybe Age of Empires will also make the move to the Switch 2 then. So this is what we have now expected from Microsoft, is to continue spreading their games out as they are now in let's make money mode for software, because their own hardware with the Xbox platform, as a console itself, isn't necessarily going to do it for them with the amount of money they've been dumping in, especially after how much money they put out for Activision Blizzard. So now they have to look elsewhere, and while the Xbox console is going to still be around and they're going to do a next generation device, the Xbox brand is more what they're focusing on, and it seems like they are trying to remove that reliance on a console for Xbox. So separate the two, and then you have an Xbox brand that would basically be behind all these different games and available everywhere, because apparently everything's an Xbox now. So we'll keep an eye on this, because if this is all correct and it does come to fruition in 2025, one thing's for sure, Microsoft is setting up to have a massive year ahead of them. Next up, let's talk about a new console that's been announced, and this is for the original PlayStation, and it looks awesome. So this was a post that was made over on their Twitter X. This is from Taki Udon. It says, the world's first affordable FPGA gaming console. Inspired by the PS1, supports PS1 games, memory cards and controllers, analog digital output, NFC, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Mr. FPGA compatible, disc support not pictured. They have the pricing starting at $149 for founders and friends, so maybe a bit more there if you buy it down the road and you just want to see how all this turns out. Apparently there's also a YC input that's for the PS1 light guns when used on a CRT. A micro SD card slot, 3 USB-A ports, 1 USB-C port, Ethernet, 3.5 millimeter analog audio, and a TOS Link digital audio. They're also talking about a bunch of different colors here for casings. Like, it looks like one they have there is directly comparable to the PS1 itself in terms of that classic PlayStation color scheme. And they say PS1, and that's what I thought of immediately when I saw it here, right? Power button, eject button on the right side, looks like a small system, and if you remember the PS1, not like the original PlayStation, the PS1 was like that revision that they did. That's actually the system I had when I finally got an original PlayStation and didn't have to rely on the neighbor's system to play through any of the games. And it was a really cool little system, especially when you got that screen with it. I don't know if they go that far. If you could get like an LCD for it, that would be pretty awesome. But the idea of this also having an add-on for the disk drive is really compelling. I'd be curious to see how all of that would work out, and I probably want that, although the SD card slot, I'm sure for many people out there will be enough, since you could just load all of your PS1 ISOs, I'm sure, on there, drop it in and play through with FPGA. That being more hardware emulation technically as opposed to software emulation. I know there's very fine details out there that the retro community would hone in on, but basically the idea is you'd have a more accurate emulation or a more accurate output when it comes to PS1 games. But nonetheless, I'm interested. And I think I'm going to be keeping an eye on this one to see if I can pick it up whenever it is available, which you'll want to follow Taki Udon over on Twitter just to keep an eye on this project if you wanted to pick one up, especially for that release timing for the early bird special, I guess, at $149. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a leak that has hit Nintendo that is going to be more interesting when it comes to the information that can be pulled from data mining, as this has to do with that network test that Nintendo ran just a couple months ago. And when this was going on, of course, people streamed it, and some people posted video of it, screenshots, it went all over social media. I know Nintendo did their best to take some of those streams down and try to keep a lid on everything, but like we saw it, and it was a very weird thing that was going on, almost like a social game experiment that they were trying out. I don't know if it was for stressing servers or what, but it looks like at least that portion of it has leaked out. Now, we can see this image that was posted up over on Reddit, and it shows the NSO playtest leaks. It's 1.9 gigabytes archive of that playtest, and it's just posted here. So it doesn't work in an emulator, as they're saying, but the idea and the hope, I guess, is that people will be able to go through and data mine it and figure out what exactly this thing was. Because a lot of times when people go through and data mine, sure, there are files that basically lead to what we've already seen on stream with these different streams. There's also a lot of files that aren't used, and they're just kind of left there. And sometimes it's full-on documentation of what they were working on, or maybe there's extensions or file names that are weird, but could lead to, okay, this is what it was supposed to be, and this is what it turned out to be. So that's the thing I'm at least curious about, is if any information gets pulled from it, because Nintendo hasn't said anything about this network test since it concluded, and it was kind of it. Like, they ran it for a little while, and then that was it. So I am still curious what exactly this was all about. I assume it's going to lead to something, and then we'll look at it and be like, okay, that's why they did network test, because they're trying this weird MMO-style game that's going to be part of the Switch 2 platform or something there. But maybe we'll find out a bit earlier, as this is just leaked out, and people, I'm sure, will be going through it. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which was Game of the Year Madness. This was a close one. We have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero versus Unicorn Overlord, and look at that. 51% to 49%. It was 50-50 for a while. I mean, hours and hours, and it could still go back to that. If in the event we have a tie, I might have to go to Twitter for the tiebreaker and let them vote for like an hour to see if someone can break the tie over there. But close one. As I said, some of these matchups are going to be good in the second round, because these are all games that have already won previously in this bracket, so they have some backing to them, right? There's some support there. Now they're kind of clashing in this second round. We already saw Astrobot take out Zelda, and maybe Dragon Ball will take out Unicorn Overlord, or it'll be a comeback. It's pretty interesting stuff right now. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Dan, who says, Nintendo continues to be the most brilliant gaming company and the absolute dumbest all at the same time. So the thing that's really funny about Nintendo is that you're right, they're brilliant in the sense that people go, wow, they came up with Mario 64, this 3D looking game, go from 2D to 3D, the analog stick, Ocarina of Time. And then we fast forward and they come up with some incredible games on the GameCube, and then on the Wii, they come up with that entire concept. But then in like 2024, people still believed that they were using fax machines across the board. So that's just kind of how Nintendo's viewed. Genius when it comes to many different like gaming ideas and stuff, but then also very dumb when it comes to most technology outside of that. I mean, we saw what they tried to do with the voice chat. It was Strange stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to travel all the way back to 2001 and see what exactly people were talking about on all those different video game forums. I actually made a video doing that, and I'll leave that right below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.